Dan was born to Dr. Frank and Margaret Hammer on October 4, 1953, at Fort Lewis, Washington. Terry was born to Ray and Madeline Stevens on May 27, 1953, in San Francisco, California. Both of their dads served in the U.S. Army. Dan's mother was killed in a tragic car accident when he was only 6 years old. Terry grew up in a Catholic family, going to Catholic schools for 12 years. Dan and Terry met at the Aquarius Tavern when the rock band Heart was playing. They were both attending the University of Washington. 8 months after meeting, God got a hold of Dan's life. Dan received Christ on August 11, 1975, in the middle of his second breakdown from drugs, alcohol, and sin. He read The Cross and the Switchblade by David Wilkerson and surrendered that night at his grandparents' house in Appleton, Wisconsin. Terry received Christ shortly after in a Sunday evening service at Westgate Chapel in Edmonds, Washington, when Israel Narvez from The Cross and the Switchblade was speaking. In the fall of 1977, after 4 years of college, Dan enrolled at Seattle Bible College. Terry graduated from the University of Washington with a teaching degree and has been a substitute teacher for over 30 years. On June 23, 1978, after waiting 1.5 years for Terry's parents' blessing, Dan and Terry were married. In 1979, while still attending Seattle Bible College, Dan joined the staff at Westgate as the Minister of Evangelism, and Terry taught Sunday school. Their son John was born in June 1980. 21 months later, they were surprised with twins, David and Anna. Life was busy with 3 children, all under the age of 2. In September 1986, Dan and Terry were sent out by Westgate Chapel to plant Sonrise Chapel, now Sonrise Christian Center. The church started in an elementary school. They were there for 11 months, and then eventually were able to lease space in an office warehouse complex. Several years later, the entire 60,000 square foot building was purchased. Dan continued his education, graduating with a master's degree in theological studies from Bakke Graduate University in 2007, and received his doctorate of ministry and servant leadership in 2011. Dan has taught at Seattle Bible College for 40 years and has been the president for 11 years. Terry has been involved with children's ministry, hospitality to many, and had the joy of leading women's ministry for more than 30 years. Dan and Terry have had the privilege to minister in 38 nations and be advisors to Aglow International since 1990. They were also part of C. Peter Wagner's Eagle Vision Apostolic Team and members of the International Coalition of Apostolic Leaders. Dan and Terry have had the pleasure of taking groups from Sonrise to Israel 4 times. 2019 was a big year in the life of the church. Sonrise Christian Center, in cooperation with the Fellowship of Christian Assemblies, started Sonrise Skagit in Burlington, Washington. Dan and Terry's son, John, and his wife, Grace, were handed the mantle of senior pastor after being on staff for more than 15 years. Dan and Terry continue to attend Sonrise, where Dan is the senior apostolic leader. Dan and Terry's greatest joy has been welcoming Grace, Darcy, and Jason into their family and seeing each family love and serve the Lord. They are so proud of them and of their 7 grandchildren, all of which live within 15 minutes of their home, and they treasure those family times. Dan and Terry have been involved with the FCA their entire Christian life. It has been a privilege to serve. Dan is now the lead elder of the FCA. Dan and Terry's highest honor is to serve the Lord Jesus Christ and His people. They are so grateful for God's incredible faithfulness to them and their family.